So I know it's been quite a while, it's been a few weeks, but here we are, back again with Katekyo Hitman REBORN. We are at chapter 129, and again, this continues on with the final fight of the Varia arc. Also with Suna versus Zanzis. If you guys go back to chapter 128, we have it where our main protagonist Tsunayoshi Sawada was trying to pull off this move. Now, if you watch the anime counterpart of this version, right now he's doing something with his hands, and you wouldn't be able to tell through the manga, but the flames that he is producing, his dying will flames, they are flashing, okay? And then you're wondering, okay, why is he making this stance? Why he's putting his hands like he's putting his hands like this? And you're thinking, okay, what is Suna trying to do? Of course, if you have read and or watched this series over and over again, and this is your favorite series, this is one of your most favorite visuals of Suna's techniques, okay? And it's not only just a technique he created himself, it's something that was actually created and utilized by the first, okay? There's a lot of similarities between Suna and the Suna who is in the position to become the 10th of the Bongola family versus the first, his great grandfather, okay, who really started it all. So while he's producing massive amounts of flames, as you can clearly see in the panel, and they're just going all over the place, and obviously you can't see them, you know, flickering like their lights on and off and everything, Zanzis is standing there wondering, yo, what is Suna trying to do? And of course the spectators are watching, trying to understand more so Dr. Shamal and Colonello, because only Reborn and Basil know what Suna is trying to accomplish by taking that stance and with his flames being utilized in such a way, right? So while they're doing that, Zanz is obviously like, what are you trying to do? Why are you, the purpose of this, why are you so desperate, right? Any chance you can get. And while Suna is doing this, you know, Zanzis, as he's speaking, then he comes to a realization like, hold on, I kind of know what the heck he is doing. The irregular flames, how they're flickering everything, and as he keeps watching Suna doing it, right, then he's like, oh, so you're trying to do the dying will 0 point breakthrough, okay? Which again, like I said, is a technique that the first Vongola Primo created, okay? So 9 generations passed, and Suna's trying to emulate and use the same technique as the first. Mind you, no other boss within the Vongola's history, long line history, has used the technique other than the first, you know? So it also makes you question, if you're someone who's new to the series, it makes you question, how does Zanzis know about such a technique? And more likely it was passed down through the generations and all the heads and everything knew it. But again, it makes you wonder also at the same time, if such a technique was utilized by the first and it's known by everybody else, how come all the other heads haven't used it? Of course, I don't think they ever really went into explanation of that. Not in just this chapter, but overall, why the other heads have never really utilized such a technique, unless it was just uniquely done and owned by the first until his direct, I wouldn't even say direct, but within his bloodline is Suna, okay? His direct progress ancestor, okay, within the family bloodline, right? So only Suna right now currently is the only one in the series, and I will say this for sure, it's the only one in the series who has used such a technique, and this is going to be his technique going forward. So this will not be the first time you're going to see Suna using the dying will 0 point breakthrough technique, okay? And it gets kind of cool what he says by the end of the chapter. But before we get to that, again, Zanzis realizes that Suna is using the first technique, and he is low-key, in a way, by the way of how they're trying to express it, not only is he skeptical, but you can kind of guess, and I'm going to throw this out there, and I know probably people, he's low-key kind of scared about this technique, okay? This is to say, without really putting out spoilers, but Zanzis knows something about the 0 point through technique that nobody else, probably other than Reborn and Basil, knows. And not only that, they're also wondering, how does Zanzis know such a technique? Okay, he's obviously very shaken by Suna trying to complete this technique to use against him. Like, this is his trump card against Zanzis. So what Zanzis is doing is like, yo, I'm not gonna allow you to go pull through to finish completing this technique and then actually, you know, fully utilize it. He goes rushing in, trying to hit Suna. Suna does evade, but then he pops up behind Suna. He uppercuts Suna, right? And then he gets behind Suna, and then he starts firing multiple shots. They do hit Suna. Well, before he hit the multiple shots, he gets behind Suna, then he shoots Suna. His flame bullet scrapes the side of Suna. Okay, of course it is kind of censored in the anime, but like in one of the panels it shows that he does have a wound. I'm like, the panels aren't the best that you read online or anything of that sort. They're not the best, but you can see that despite the clothing he is wearing that was basically created by Leon by adding multiple layers. Obviously the vest went to go and now all he's left with is the undershirt. Any more damage and yeah, that's it. So it's barely protecting, and Suna is starting to show visible wounds. Okay, so while he's clutching his side, that's when Zanzu starts shooting multiple rounds on Suna. Okay, to the point that there was a big explosion. Remember, Gokudera and Hibari are the only ones who are, aside from Belgafor and Leviton, but he's out conscious because of Gokudera. So they're the only ones who are wondering, what was that big explosion further away from them? Hibari is trying to patch himself up, while Gokudera is running to go get the rest of his teammates in order to aid them and give them the antidote so they don't die from the poison. Let's not forget about them, okay? So while he's doing that, now we see the after effect of the multiple round shots that shot rounds that Zanzis landed on Suna, and there's like multiple craters on the ground, and then Suna's in the middle. Once all the smoke is cleared and everything, then you see a laid out Suna. He looked like he did, but would Katekyo Hitman REBORN last 409 chapters if the main character was to pass away in chapter 129? No. But what makes it so cool about it is how he makes it back, right? So he's laying on the ground. Zanzis. This is the third character. And there's more characters in anime and manga history. But a lot of the times I just don't be paying attention when they say these things, when they're getting disrespectful. Okay, the first one to use this term, this word. Actually, there's 4 characters that I know, and 2 of them is from one series, right? The same series. The first one to use it is Frieza. I think you guys know where I'm going with this, right? First is Frieza. Then if you guys are going by recent history, right? This man only used it one time and traumatized a teenage boy to the point that he became a cult leader and the worst curse user in human history. In Jujutsu and human history. Toji used the term, and then Geto ended up using the term. And now you mean to tell me, even though chronologically why Zanzis is right after Frieza, but who cares at this point? Then Zanzis ends up using it. So what he said is basically, he likes using the word scum, right? He's thinking, oh, Suna's dead. Oh, he's foolish scum. You brought about your own death, like a monkey imitating things you don't know. This is the 4th time, bro. And I know there's other characters, but like I said, I can't remember much characters, and these are just the most prominent. Zanzis likes using the word scum a lot, but the fact that he calls Suna a monkey. And mind you, this is reminiscent of the whole Toji versus Geto. Geto's laying on the ground unconscious, right? And while Toji called him, you had to fight and you were beaten by a monkey like myself. Thank God Suna is not like Geto. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. At least he ain't going around calling people monkey after being traumatized like that, right? But the fact that he said that, the fact that Zanzis said that, I'm like, I had to reread it several times. I'm like, no, he didn't. He didn't. He really said that, didn't he? Yeah. So he said that. He said that, right? Anywho, after him saying that, he's like, I guess in a way he was trying to coax his own self, thinking like, oh yeah, you like a fake, like you could never use a technique like that. Like that obviously tells you that 0-point breakthrough is something that Zanzis fears. Because why would he immediately go on the, like, it's not, before he was already on the offensive and everything, he was already hurting Suna. But the fact that Suna, the minute he starts to try to use this technique to just start it, right? To start the engine of this technique, Zanzis, without any rhyme or reason, immediately wanted to put Suna down, like worse than prior to this, okay? Obviously, this technique is very dangerous to Zanzis, and the place just got dark. This technique is obviously very dangerous to Zanzis, and they're going to quickly, within the next, give or take 2-3 chapters, explain why. Technically, starting from next chapter, once I get to it, to the next 2 or so chapters, you'll understand particularly why. Of course, if you read, like I said, if you read or watched the series, of course, no spoilers in this regard, but you'll understand why Zanzis in particular does not like this technique at all, right? So while everybody's wondering, dang, Suna's out for the count, then you start to see the flame pop back up again. Okay, Suna survives, and then his gloves obviously change from mittens back into the X gloves, and then he's raising himself up, right? This is now where we have where Reborn is just like, Suna succeeded. He basically knows how to do the 0-point breakthrough technique, right? So now this is where he starts to go into explanation. It might be a little confusing. By the end of the chapter, someone did, and they did put a note at the end, which was very easy. But basically what Reborn is saying is that, like, what Suna did from his neutral state, basically he's not in dying will form. So when he's in his neutral state, aka a zero, right? He's in his basic, most common, before he goes into dying will. Once he goes into dying will and basically using the flames is considered a plus. So and what he did was he did a reverse. He created using reverse dying will. So when you go into the dying will, you do have to essentially die with a regret, and your will brings you about back to life, and hence why it's called a dying will. You're living by that will alone. And that, obviously is also the life force. So dying will flames are obviously your life force that are created, and it's also based upon how strong your will is, right? So neutral state is basically someone who is normal. They're at 0. This is before they go into the dying will. Once they go into the dying will and they start, using the flames and everything, that is considered a plus. Now, when they start to go into the negative, right, they reverse from the positive, right, and then they go into the minus state. So basically it goes kind of like, you start from 0, then you go into the plus, basically dying will, and then when you reverse that, it almost seems like you died, but that's only for a moment at a time, right? And while also being kind of in this negative state, right? Because how Suna was able to achieve it, he was able to receive the last blast before he kind of was knocked out or anything. He was able to nullify Zanz's flames while in the negative state of the dying will. Okay, aka he's kind of dead for a very short momentary time. Okay, and while being in that state, right, his hyper intuition is now blaring and going crazy, because in that state he needs to understand how to actually use the 0-point breakthrough technique, right? Because he can't do that while he's technically in the dying will plus mode. He can't really do that. When he's in the plus state, he can't do it. But when he's in a negative state, he can. So he has to go kind of almost like they said, it's reverse. So neutral, then plus, aka dying will, then he kind of goes back, okay, and he dies momentarily and then goes right back into dying will mode, okay? But he can't stay in a negative state for too long, or else he really would perish technically, because remember, it is in reverse, right? So he's able, like I said, he's able, while he's in a negative state, he's able to receive and negate the flames, right? And also that in return also negates the damage, okay? And as Colonel is asking, why does that produce, quite unusual flickering flame? Again, if you go watch the anime version of it, you see the flames, producing, going all over the place, flickering like lights. And Reborn says that that's because in order to achieve the minus state, he must balance the timing of going back and forth between the plus state and the 0-point. Basically, what I was saying, like he has to do that, or else he like that. Okay, and then if he did, we wouldn't have 409 chapters of the entire series. So now it gets back to the point where now Suna's fully awake, he's in dying will form, and Zanzus is telling Suna this is the technique that the first used. He used the 0-point breakthrough, and then he's mocking Suna, he's laughing, and he's saying that like the 0-point breakthrough technique is nothing like that, meaning the way that Suna is trying to utilize this technique is nothing like the first. And even though that is the case, and then he's saying it's pathetic, because Suna has sustained so much damage during their fight, right? In other words, when the first did it, the first again had to be going through the reverse dying will mode or dying will state, and then eventually start using the 0-point breakthrough, right? But more than likely, he probably made sure at the time, and we wouldn't know because like we didn't see it. There was no flashback to show like how the first did it. But it also makes you wonder, how does Zanzus know this, right? How it's not like he was there when the first was alive. So how does he know what's the proper usage of the technique? Now this is where it comes odd, because now Reborn is kind of agreeing with Zanzus in this regard. And like I stated not too long ago, when Zanzus went behind Suna and shot him and it glazed him on the side, like I guess from the panel it looks like not only the shirt is darkened, but I guess they're trying to show that like there's not much skin there. Of course, like I stated many chapters ago, like the anime has censored, and even now the anime has censored. So what if it was meant to be like very grotesque looking, the anime kind of omitted that. But like imagine getting burned to the point that you see your flesh, like red parts, or in this case the manga black, because it's black and white. Suna sustaining severe damage while trying to actually activate this technique. So if Suna is trying to use the 0-point breakthrough and doesn't actually fulfill it, it can mean his immediate end. And also the fact that like by using the reverse dying will is actually very dangerous, because again, if you already died per se to get into the dying will, Suna can't go into the dying will by himself without getting shot by Reborn. So the fact that he obviously starts from 0, aka regular Suna at the end of the day, then gets shot, he dies technically, technically, remember, he dies at the end of the day, hence why it's called dying will mode, or hyper dying will mode. He literally does die, then come back due to his will bringing him back, right? And then he technically does die again, and he can't stay in that particular momentum for too long, or else a funeral, right? So Reborn even states that this is a very dangerous thing for Suna to do, and he cannot stay in that mode for too long. Not only that, if he was to do this again and then get hit with another direct attack from Zanzis, it's going to prove to be extremely fatal for Suna's survival, meaning his survival rate is going to drop to immediately a 0. So this is a gamble on Suna's side. This causes Basil to start questioning anxiously, obviously. So what was the point of learning this technique and everything if Suna is not actually using it correctly? This is where, like, Reborn, again, because nobody was currently right now has not lived long enough or was not born during the time of when the first created the entire Vongola, he's saying that, like, the impression among most people is that the so-called dying will breakthrough technique is a technique used by the first boss, but in reality it's a reverse dying will condition that shows the path to the technique. So hence why, by Suna going into the reverse dying will, right, by him entering that, he basically, like I said, he basically got the answers from his hyper intuition, right? And through getting those answers, Suna knows how to actually finish the technique. He has all the requirements that is needed to now activate the 0-point breakthrough. Okay, but in this case, it's not going to be like the first, right? So then we have, again, Zanzis is just like, it's over for you, scum. I'm going to shoot you into obliteration. And then Suna's like, make sure to have a good aim. Make sure to shoot right. Okay, make sure you aim well. And then now Suna, instead of doing this, okay, with his hands, he does something like this, like a diamond, right? And now, instead of it just being the regular technique that was utilized by the first, now he's calling it the 0-point breakthrough revised. Okay, so even Reborn realizes that he realizes that Suna, like I said, Suna's hyper intuition, or the blood of the Vongola that runs through his veins, is telling him the answers. So again, when Suna went into reverse dying will, right, start at neutral, just to explain so you guys don't get confused, he starts at neutral, aka regular Suna, dies, Reborn, dying will or hyper dying will, then he kind of goes into this negative state, aka he dies momentarily, but he has to come back immediately. While in that period, that stagnant period of time, whatever was whispering in his head, or whatever answers he was getting from his ancestors or anything, the hyper intuition, also his spidey sense, okay, gave him the answers of how to make his own version of the same technique that was used by the first. So the first used it in a certain way, but now Suna has requirements and knows how to use it, but he's going to put his own twist on it. Hence why it's now called the 0-point breakthrough revised. And the chapter ends on that. And like I said, there was like a footnote, and they explained in the case, I'm going to read it. In case the explanation is not clear, to achieve the minus state, Suna must go through 0-point. That's why every time he uses a 0-point breakthrough, he reverts to his 27 minutes 0-point for a moment before turning back into the X gloves plus or minus state. Suna does not have the ability to consciously go into dying will mode without Reborn's bullet. Okay, so that's how they basically summarize it, and that's one way you guys can go about understanding it. So anytime he does go into reverse dying, just remember his mittens go back to 0, his X gloves go into 0, aka they look like the regular mittens, 27 mittens. Once he goes back into plus or minus mode, they turn back into the X gloves. I don't have the gloves, I shall buy them hopefully one day. Okay, one day possibly. But that's basically it. And this is something, again, if you're new, this is one of Suna's best techniques he has in the series. There's another one, but this one is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And again, like I said, this is the very same technique that, if as you can tell in the chapter, Zanzis is very shaken by it. Hence why he wanted to put Suna down immediately. Like, of course, yes, he still wanted to put down Suna regardless of the fact, but it was almost like he was playing with his food, making mockery of Suna to put him in his place and make him realize, like, you amount to nothing. Okay, you were not meant to be here, and I'm going to show that to you. But the minute Suna started to try to use a technique that was originally originated from the first, something within that technique triggered Zanz's fight or flight senses. And again, he immediately said, you know what? No. We're done with the games. We're done. I'm taking you out right now. And again, like I said, since the technique was originally made by the first, you would think, okay, all the Vongola bosses at least going after him would at least know. So it would not be a shocker, and I'm saying this with the sense of, like, as if I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm doing this for those who don't know what's actually going to happen after this. Zanzis had to have witnessed it at some point. If the way he talks, he has to have witnessed it, and something about it is very scary. Hence why all of his defenses is at 100 within this chapter. Okay, if you guys are new to the series, anime or manga, do tell me your thoughts on it. If you are someone who's been reading or watching for a very long time, obviously no spoilers, but do tell me your thoughts on chapter 129 of Katekyo Hitman REBORN. Do tell me what are some of your favorite techniques of Suna without getting too much into spoiler field. You know, the links are in the description box. You guys can go check that out. I'm Kimi-chan, and I will see you guys later. Bye.